Welcome to another episode of the Heat Your Home Energy Show, where we are joined today by Max Waddingham, Operations Director of Good Energy. Welcome to the show, Max.
Thanks, Simon. Glad to be here. Yeah.
Is this your first podcast?
It is my first podcast, yeah.
And you get to experience the new branding for Heatio. We've gone blue from orange.
Yeah, loving it. And no one at home can see that there's a Mortal Kombat machine just in front of us as well. It's great.
The hidden behind the stage stuff. So we're going to talk about all things around good energy and my favourite topic, heat pumps, as part of the show today. But before we get into that, can you tell us a little bit around your background? Who is Max?
Yeah, of course. So, Max Waddingham, work at Good Energy, predominantly on the heating side as operations director. But, I guess starting at the beginning, straight out of school, I joined the Army, what is known as the Army Air Corps, so working on Army aviation. Mainly putting fuel and things like that in helicopters, a few jaunts here and there, 2 trips to Afghanistan, all expenses paid. And a few kind of varied jobs, all of which involved sweeping kind of hangar floors. But the Army gave me a great opportunity to kind of do some self-funded learning. So I did kind of Bachelor of Engineering when I was in the Army. And that geared me up for, after 11 years or so there, I kind of started to look for something else, moved into, initially straight out of the Army, into a very, very brief jaunt doing some wastewater energy kind of recollection kind of stuff through cavitation of bubbles, all very, very out there, quite naive in the market. But that company folded very quickly, and I found myself very fortunate to land a job at Valent, heat pump and boiler manufacturer based out of Belper, Derbyshire. I live in Nottingham myself, so quite close by. Did a good 4 or 5 years there in the system technologies team, which was heating design for new builds. I was on the commercial heating, commercial boiler side to start with. Bit of this, bit of that, really, around the boiler kind of manufacturing, renewable side of it. Really enjoyable kind of role there, really great time. And then after kind of 4 or 5 years, moved on to what at the time was Igloo Energy, Igloo Works as it was called then, as the senior heating design engineer there. So Igloo Works was a domestic retrofit heat pump installation company, specializing in more bespoke jobs, not so much the cookie cutter installs, but willing to work with all sorts of customers. And with the energy crisis, Igloo Energy, the kind of parent company there, went into administration, and Igloo Works, as it was then, was kind of acquired by Good Energy. We're talking 2 years ago now, I think. Good Energy, moving into the energy services business, picked us up as a heat pump installation company. It's kind of given us loads and loads of backing to moving to where I am today. So, how do you go from heating design engineer through to operations director? Well, it's through the growth of the company, through opportunities that have come through people moving on, natural growth of the company, and just the requirements of the role at the time. Like, can somebody cover customer care for a couple of days? That falls under ops. Can you just do a few days looking after the fleet? And it just all kind of snowballs. Jeez. And wake up one day as operations director for a fantastic team in a fantastic company, kind of well documented. I think one of the 25 or top 25 employers in the country. So
my God,
very fortunate position now as the operations director, looking after the heat team at Good Energy. Yeah, so
what a journey. I guess
very varied. Yeah,
2 tours of Afghanistan probably prepared you very well for the energy sector, I think.
I think you get a lot less kind of flack incoming in Afghanistan than you do
the energy market.
I jest. I was always nice and cozy behind a wire over there, so I'm a lot more exposed to the elements of the energy sector, but in a good way, because probably comes across from my background in moving industries and things a little bit. But I love a challenge, and what an industry we're in to face a challenge at the moment with climate change and everything, and net zero path. So
I think that's one of the most exciting things about this industry, and it can be also one of the most frustrating things sometimes. And I know on this show we often talk about heat pump technologies. It's kind of our mastermind subject, but actually companies like Good Energy kind of set the precedent for this, a whole solution that is needed. It isn't just technologies in isolation. It's as much around tariffs as it is about how we trade energy and the technologies that we install in people's homes and how they all communicate together and how we make sure they're working in the right way. So just tell us a little bit more about Good Energy. What does it stand for? Where did it come from? And what is Good Energy doing now that maybe sets it aside from more traditional energy suppliers?
Yeah, of course. So Good Energy, it's actually our 25th anniversary this year for Good Energy. And we were founded 25 years ago, of course, by Julia Davenport, our founder, who just wanted some legitimate renewable energy in the kind of utility space there. So at the time, kind of the only real 100% renewable energy provider. It's I wouldn't say a crowded space, but people are starting to move into this renewable space. But Good Energy have been doing it for 25 years with an aim to provide, buy, supply 100% renewable kind of energy and energy services to customers. And through kind of the uptake of that and the growth of the company, moving more nowadays into energy services. So I guess the ideal Good Energy customer, if you like, is somebody who has a heat pump from us. Great. If not, still electrified heating, solar, again, from us, fantastic. But if it's from elsewhere, we will buy the solar export from that customer. EV charger, we've got, innovative tariffs, EV tariffs, interesting kind of developments around that. And I guess our ideal customer is somebody that we can supply renewable electricity to. We can buy it from them and provide that to other customers, and we can help them reduce their carbon footprint through services that we offer. And just to again raise awareness around carbon reduction for homeowners. If somebody comes to us and they don't necessarily switch their energy to Good Energy, but they've become a lot more aware of how energy is kind of produced and what the renewables tag actually means in this country. I guess our aim is just to reduce carbon footprints of consumers and to, I guess, provide any kind of information and education that we can in that consumer space.
And were you energy supply first and then started adding on those technology installation solutions, or was it technology first and then supply?
No, it was supply for the lion's share of that 25 years was an energy supply side. And more recently, I think we were the first acquisition on the energy services side in the Igloo days, 2 years ago, I think I said there. So I think December 22 was the first kind of foray into install on our own right. I think there was always a kind of lead referral thing in place for a few years to another installer, but actually going out and doing the work ourselves, doing the installation, nothing subcontracted either. So it's all in-house, and that's a lot more recent. That's more, last 2 or 3 years.
And that's an interesting journey, especially when you consider there was a period in time, and I guess Igloo would have popped up during that period where we had a kind of influx of new energy suppliers that entered the market. I believe at that time there was some regulatory change that kind of enabled new entrants into that market, maybe to create more competition or what have you. But Good Energy was around before that, and it's still around now. How did Good Energy go through that transition? Because that was a fairly turbulent time. I think there was, off the top of my head, there was around 30 energy suppliers that over a period of time went into either special measures or administration. Yeah.
It was, you say, a very turbulent time in the industry there. Certainly, Igloo, where we were, was a casualty of that time there. I think you saw companies as big as Bulb Holding and their customer base, going to Octopus. But what kind of differentiates Good Energy is that when we're saying 100% renewable energy, we mean it. We hourly match any kind of kilowatt hour draw from, if you were a customer of ours and you're taking a kilowatt hour of electricity from us, our aim is within an hour we will have kind of supplied that kilowatt hour to the grid. So through PPAs, power purchase agreements, which is where we have contracts with suppliers where we will buy the energy from them, not just kind of any offset certificates that they might offer, but actually using the energy from the renewable suppliers and providing it to customers. We have quite a unique selling point that other kind of companies do, whether they're renewable companies or not. And as a result, what you see is we have this derogation from the price cap. That means we're exempt to the price cap, basically. I think Ofgem's noted that providing actual renewable energy to the customer when they use it, not offsetting or anything like that, but actually the energy we put into the grid is renewable. The energy we sell to customers is renewable at the point of use or as close to as possible with the hourly matching. We weren't kind of held under the boot, if you like, of the price cap, and the supply was costing us more and we couldn't sell it for what we were buying it at. Our prices didn't go through the roof by all means. It wasn't, a case of absolutely hammering customers with prices, but the renewable supply side was a bit exempt from that. They're not kind of subject to Russian gas. They're not linked to gas in the same way that a coal power station or something like that, a renewable farm that's kind of linked in the price cap to the gas prices and all that sort of stuff. It's not linked in the same way. So there was a bit of freedom there for our customers to make the choice, stay renewable, and we didn't have to kind of hammer our prices down to an unprofitable kind of level. And
that's
as a result,
interesting. So and did you find was there a change in the price per unit that you were buying renewable energy at that time?
That side I'm not 100% on, because that's not my side. Being on the heat side, I'm picking up bits and bobs from discussions I'm having with the very smart, well-informed and great kind of teams we have that work on that side. But I was a customer at the time. I was certainly a good energy customer, and we didn't have the kind of massive price fluctuations that I just moved house at the time, funnily enough, and I was moving from, I can't remember who I was on supply with in my old house, but we saw the price cap change massively over a period of a couple of months. And yeah, there were changes with my tariff as a good energy customer, but not
to the same level,
not massively. And again, certainly not extortionately so as a user. You're always going to expect to pay a little bit of a premium if you are making a conscious choice to use a 100% kind of matched renewable supply rather than a notionally renewable supply. But I don't think there was the same fluctuations that hit the rest of the industry.
To put it into context, because there's this term that's kicked around a dirty grid, in that essentially everything goes in, whether it's generated by fossil fuels, whether it's generated from renewables, it kind of all goes into the same pot, and then it spits out into appliances and usage in the home. So that relationship between a consumer of good energy buying a unit of electricity and you then buying that unit of electricity from a renewable supplier, how does that actually work? Is it?
Yeah. It's an interesting topic, because again, you can go to a supplier that's 100% renewable, and the way this was explained to me, and I think it's a really good way of looking at it, is you could be a customer of an energy provider. 365 days, 364 days, you are turning your kettle on, turning your toaster on, whatever it might be. Your energy is just plugged into the nearest coal power station, whatever it might be, gas, and the energy you are using is being provided by a non-renewable source, let's say. And then on the 365th day, said energy company could just go and buy a load of called REGO, so renewable energy generation origin kind of certificates. They're just going and buying a load of these and saying, hey, this is now renewable. So in theory, overnight could become a renewable energy company, despite most of the year or most of the energy you are supplied, or the grid electrical mix that they have, being kind of predominantly fossil fuel rather than renewables.
So actually the unit that you consume at that moment in time could have, because you're doing it within the hour, you're as close as possible to directly offsetting it against renewable energy that's come into the grid, whereas somebody could supply for 364 days of the year fossil fuel generated electricity, and at the end, on that final day, they just go and offset a bunch of it and call it it renewable.
Yeah, exactly that. If we signed, as Good Energy signed 100 new customers up to our tariffs tomorrow, we have to go and source kind of power purchase agreements. We have to go and find renewable suppliers to match that customer base that we signed, because our aim is to, within an hour, match the consumption of our customers with renewable sources. It's not always possible. I think over the last kind of 5 years, we've got kind of 90% hit rate on matching that hour. Some might stumble into 2 hours, maybe even a couple of days, but the aim and the intention is there. And that's where I think the grid needs to be moving to reach net zero. You need to be matching consumption with renewable supply. Big problem in renewables is that you can't store the wind now for tomorrow. So it's
It's getting that trading absolutely right. And now we touched on this a little earlier in a kind of pre-show catch up, but is there a challenge there in terms of kind of consumers to good energy and availability of renewable energy supplies? You mentioned the power purchase agreement and actually going out and finding those generating assets out in the market. Have we got a gap between those two that creates a limitation, or have we got an abundance of renewables that we're just not taking advantage of?
Yeah, for sure. So I think, don't quote me on the numbers, but I think 30 to 40% of our kind of electrical mix at the moment comes from renewables. So, best case scenario there, 60% of our grid, which is still fossil based, or, nuclear has no emissions in that, but there's a lot of opinions around there. So yeah, there's not enough to cover the full load. I think with more things being electrified, certainly transport nowadays, heat being electrified in the coming years, there's going to be more demand for renewable sources. There, I guess, isn't enough to go around in this country at the moment. But again, informed customers will make the decision. They'll push the renewables. You see people moving to renewable tariffs, but all renewable tariffs are not created equal. I think when we were speaking about this earlier, what I was talking about was, let's take a notional factory with a solar array on the roof. If we went and signed a power purchase agreement with those guys, we would be buying their export energy. We would be providing that to our customers, and that's what a power purchase agreement is. We've bought their power and we've supplied that to somebody else. That's how that works. Another scenario where a company could be renewable is that, let's say that warehouse generates a load of power. They use that power themselves. That power is then generated these kind of credits, if you like, these energy efficiency credits. Somebody can go and buy those. They can buy the green off of the electric without ever buying the electric, and just say, "Hey, guys, we're now green. We've bought these energy credits." But that energy is being gone by that company who's not necessarily invested in saying they provide renewable electric. So it's a bit of a flaw in the system. It does encourage renewables because you can buy those regos, but not in the same way that we need energy. We need somebody to supply that energy. Therefore, we've got to, through contracts, buy outputs of wind farms, solar farms, hydro. So it's not funded in the same way. I think you can buy a megawatt hour kind of rego at the moment for £1.50, a couple of quid. So, I mean, you can offset a lot of electric for not a lot of money.
It's interesting when you apply that to the kind of deployment of renewable energy as well, because there's always that big capital cost barrier to seeing technologies go out into the field. And I think certainly in the next episode, we're going to be getting into kind of our specialist subject on heat pumps and what that means. But
can't wait for that.
Yeah, but I'm going to test your knowledge on the energy market in advance. This when it comes to, for instance, putting up a wind site, there's a huge capital cost and a lot of time involved in getting that to a point where it's connected to the grid and generating. And then are you finding it as good energy? You have to kind of engage in those projects at kind of cultivation stage, or when you enter a PPA, it's typically the turbine's already spin, it's already generating, or do you find that you're actually more in the solar world and it's approaching people like commercial warehouses and things like that? I've already got solar on the roof and approaching them with the opportunity of a PPA. So
I think a lot of our suppliers, our kind of generators, they grow with us. We might sign somebody on a kind of small setup, a couple of panels in a field or something like that, and over time there's growth there. On the actual customer acquisition side, I know Tom Parsons, our sales director, and our kind of power purchasing team. Again, I love that job title. So every time I say that kind of job, but they're always working hard to source new generators. They grow with us, as I say there, but something that I don't think a lot of people necessarily realise, you can get paid solar export. So again, there's a lot of companies out there doing that. I know we offer 15 pence a kilowatt hour for domestic solar kind of export, which is kind of up there with kind of the higher export kind of payments in the market there. And so again, I have solar at home. I'm a good energy customer on good energy export. If I've got a kilowatt hour that I've generated from my roof and I'm not using, that's going to somebody that we supply as well. So we've got to source more renewables, but as the market's growing domestically, more people are putting panels on their roof. These micro generators, as we refer to them, they're all contributing as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to be new turbines going in fields, new panels. It's just, we build a load of new houses, chuck some panels on them, put them on an export, that can supply the grid at times of kind of peak demand, or somebody's at work, but their house is generating electric. That's going into the grid. I think you mentioned earlier about this. Everything's just put into the grid and then it's drawn. The way I'd envisage it is, you imagine the electrical grid in this country is this big swimming pool. You're at one end taking a drink out of it. If you drink out of a swimming pool, you're at one end taking a cup out. All the energy companies are at the other side pouring that cup in. Mm-hmm. And
the generator's one end and the consumers on the other.
It's not that we're supplying directly. It's just that we're almost offsetting your consumption with what we put back in. But what we put in is renewables, and sourcing those is always going to be a challenge as we want to increase the renewable mix in the grid. Of course, you need more renewables, but it doesn't always have to come from the big, huge infrastructure.
That's key, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think the more we see coming from renewable generation and the uptake, be it at a commercial level, at a domestic level, or those kind of large wind farms, solar farms, and hydro as well feeding into the mix. But do you see that kind of power purchase world ever starting to step into the residential space? We talked about you say the solar export guarantee and kind of 15 pence per kilowatt hour, and then you've got demand flexibility programs where you're kind of being paid closer to kind of £3 a kilowatt hour, but it's very much time of use to push that back to the grid. Do you see the power purchase world starting to step into that space? Or
I mean, purely my opinion, because I don't know what the guys at the office are talking about here, but it's got to be approached with an open mind, because we've done. You talk about demand flexibility. We did a little stint into that. We called it Power Pause at Good Energy, and we kind of matched that with a heat pump kind of flexibility thing that we did with University of Southampton called the Latent Project, and just trying to flex homeowners, find that sweet spot. Do you need to use all your electric? If we move into power purchase agreements, domestically speaking, I mean, the difference between a wind farm and somebody's house is a wind farm can't decide that, England kick off at 5 o'clock. So I'm going to go, I was going to say turn a barbecue on, but that's not affected by electric. I'm going to turn the oven on, chuck a couple of pizzas in. I'm going to up my usage. So you can't necessarily forecast for that domestically in the same way that you can. But if you're trying to encourage it, you've got to incentivize it. So, I mean, I think what we all need, what everybody unanimously agrees, is that we just need clear direction from what kind of government wants to do. Yeah. Whatever government that may be. We just need direction, and then that's going to kind of steer what everybody's going to kind of look at, and what
going to be a huge part of it, isn't it? I mean, we can't get away from the fact that we're everywhere you look at the moment, we're in the middle of a general election, so the campaigns are running and various green messages. I think the fact that we've got a blue background does not necessarily say we're voting Conservative, but I really like the sound of the GB Energy coming out of Labour, and I think the more we can do. I remember back in 2015 when the Conservatives kind of put a stop to onshore wind, and at that time where we're really trying to get behind renewable energy, we were seeing an uptake in electrified heating in the form of heat pumps, especially under the renewable heat incentive at the time, and it just seemed so counterproductive to put a stop to that, where it was starting to become kind of commonplace that we're seeing electrified heating systems, and therefore we're going to naturally need more electrification going onto the grid, and to put a stop on such a great opportunity we had in a very windy island. And hopefully maybe under GB Energy, because I guess the more renewable energy that we have coming onto the grid, the more opportunities for you to be able to enter into PPAs, the more renewable energy you can supply to your customer base. But I would imagine fundamentally the price point for the consumers must change if we start seeing more renewable energy come on the price per unit. If we can create more competition for those PPAs.
Yeah, exactly that. And I mean, details are a bit scarce on what GB Energy is going to look like. I think the indications are they're not going to be a supply business. It's more as you say, they're building the infrastructure. An abundance of something does make it cheaper. So of course, if there's 3 or 4 companies fighting over the same contracts at the moment, the price is going to be relatively high. But if it starts, there's a suite of renewable sources and competition for those kind of those renewable kind of generators simmers down a little bit, then of course the cost to acquire that energy is then cheaper. The infrastructure has obviously got to be paid for. We see that kind of lumped onto the social kind of obligation on electric at the moment. Electricity is funding renewables for electricity, which kind of, if you think about it, might incentivize fossil fuels to an extent because they're cheaper, because they're not paying for the transition. Wherever you sit on that particular opinion, again, it's something that certainly needs to be addressed and looked at, whether that's moved into normal taxation. But all of these factors together are going to kind of have an effect on the price for the customer. Because money talks. If something's cheaper, people will adopt it. If something's more expensive, you only get the kind of mass early adopter market who are crazy about a particular technology or particularly passionate about a subject that will move to it. But yeah, I mean, investment in renewables is never a bad thing, from my opinion. But
we need it, don't we? We need it on a big scale. But I think the things that good energy are proving actually is the mechanism is there to trade that energy and actually do it in the right way. So not necessarily the greenwashing tactics that are taken by others, but actually be able to trade it as close as possible to the point of consumption. Does that lead to? This is a question we've had come quite a bit with our audience, where people are maybe in the consideration phase of renewable technologies. They're hearing about kind of time of use tariffs, or but you can imagine for the majority of the UK population, they're on fixed rate tariffs where they pay the same pence per kilowatt hour of electricity and gas, regardless of when they use it in the day. Would a good energy customer be buying and their electricity at different prices in the day, or is it similar kind of fixed rate per unit?
So what we have at the moment is a standard variable tariff, which is just as any other kind of normal tariff, I would say, that you sign up to, where there's a price, changes a little bit depending on geography, as all tariffs do. That's why you put your postcode in the kind of quote me section. We've then got an EV tariff, so overnight cheap period of I want to say 5 hours. 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. I think it is at the moment. But I mean, I'm on that tariff at the moment, so it's still variable. It's not fixed at this moment, but that's 6 hours of cheap electric. I think somewhere in the region of about 8 pence overnight, and then during the day at the moment, I think about 26 pence for me, which again, for 100% matched renewable energy, it's not. You're not talking kind of double the price cap prices at all. Far from it. It's actually very, very competitive for what. Of course, I'm biased, but my opinion is a very genuine and unique product. But the time of use, again, I have a heat pump at home. I've shifted my hot water to the cheap tariff. So, not to get into the heat pump discussion now, but as a homeowner, I think with these time of use tariffs, the impetus is a bit on the homeowner or me, myself, to make that tariff work for me. So there's always kind of new and innovative tariffs coming out, but with that, it's got to be matched with hardware that takes the thinking away from it, if you like. So
it's such a big part of the mix. It's certainly from Heatio's perspective, that's where we focus in that home energy management, optimization, and grid balancing, and there's so many factors when you take that into consideration. I had a really fascinating chat with one of our team who's specifically working on the algorithm between solar generation, hot water demand, heating demand, grid, half hourly tariff rates, and forecasted weather conditions. And honestly, it's so interesting when you start getting into the ability to predict. And this was the output of the algorithm of the day. It predicted what the generation was going to be from the solar panels, which is becoming more commonplace based on regional weather data. But the really interesting part was the was able to predict what the heat pump heating curve was going to be. Therefore, could predict the electricity consumption, and told the heat pump to come on an hour earlier because it knew based on the 24-hour profile for the house it was going to be able to run it earlier. So we've got this running in 2 test houses at the moment, and it's incredible. Then when you actually see what that brings the blended pence per kilowatt hour rate down to. So that probably goes to my next question, really, around that kind of tariff usage and where that's going. That particular customer is on Octopus's Agile tariff.
Yes. Yeah.
So for those who don't know, the Agile tariff from Octopus, you kind of get an announcement about, I think it's about 7 p.m. of an evening, that'll tell you what the half hourly energy prices will be for that next day, and they change every half an hour, and there'll be periods of the day when it's higher, and there's periods of the day when it's lower. There's actually been periods of the day when it's you actually get paid to take electricity off the grid, or it's even free, especially if there's a lot of renewable energy going onto the grid. I think we had a few windy days when it was kind of in the minuses. So at the moment with the kind of standard variable tariff and that off-peak period, kind of for my parents, that was economy 7, economy 10 type tariffs. Do you see Good Energy moving into that kind of half-hourly energy trading in the future?
I mean, it's certainly something worth looking at for sure. I don't know kind of what the product and props team have got up the sleeve in terms of nice innovative tariffs and things like that in the future. But how that works with the scenario you gave there, where something's doing the thinking for you, and you can kind of set up a little brain, if you like, in your house, and it's going to do all that thinking for you. These smart tariffs are all great, but they're only as good as kind of the control you have over them. So if I were on Agile, for example, and I didn't have something looking at that for me, I've got to think about how I've got half an hour now, it's cheap, turn everything on. Oh no, wait, turn it back off now because it's more expensive. So those tariffs, whether we're looking at doing them or not in the future, I mean, that would remain to be seen. But let
me ask it in a different way then. Okay, this is from Max. If you were to say, what's your dream scenario if you were to fast forward this to, whether it's 5 years, 10 years time, if you say, right, what would you love the energy landscape to be looking at? And when I ask that, I know it's a massive question to answer, but this is your personal view based on, say, technology wise in the home, but also that kind of the tariff and trading. Where would you love the UK to be?
I think the ideal home, in my opinion, in 5-10 years, whatever it might be. So first off, it'd be electrified. So the electrical grid is always getting cleaner. It might not be 100% renewable in 5-10 years, but you can always work on that grid side. What you can't do is just kind of clean the gas up that's coming through. I mean, there's things out there, biogas and things, but for the volumes needed, I think electrification of the home for me. And then, what
does that mean? Just for the viewers, what does electrified home mean?
So, I mean, you're heating hot water. It's through electrical means. I mean, preferably a heat pump, but if you're on kind of storage heaters or something, it's cleaner than gas. I'll say that. But preferably a heat pump outside. Hot water's done that way. You are on an induction hob. You've not got a kind of gas hob in there.
No gas fires.
No gas fires, no need for those with the heat pump, which is going to keep you nice and toasty in those winter days. But sure, if you want an electric fire for the aesthetics, go for it, go nuts. But you've got solar panels on the roof there. That is running, certainly a day like today, the heating's off. It's 20 degrees here or something today. Heating's off, the solar panels are ticking over with your fridge, anything like that. If you've got a car, that started charging up at this time. If you've got a battery, that's kind of topping itself up. You get to the darker times of the day or winter where you've got less days. You are pulling from the grid. That is then supplied by as close to 100% renewable electric as possible. So we're not burning anything to give you that. The wind's rustling through some trees and some turbines, and the sun's bouncing off some panels or some waves down at the coast that you might be surfing over in Newquay. Underneath that, you're generating power as well. So all these kind of abundant means of generating energy that we have in this country, we're on a windy island surrounded by waves. We get, people argue the point here, but plenty of sun on occasion. So there's there's no reason in the not too distant future all of this can't be renewably produced. So anything that you can't produce yourself at home, you then bring in from an infrastructure which is green, which is, and by green I mean 100% renewable supplied energy. And anything you're producing in excess of what you're using, that can go back into the grid and that can feed into that 100% renewable. So if I'm exporting 5 kilowatt hours in an hour of electric, so the energy my solar panels are producing isn't being used by me, that can go through the grid to my next door neighbor who maybe doesn't have solar panels, but that's running their kind of electrified home. And I think it's a bit kind of Jetsons, but that's.
I don't think, you know what? There's the really exciting part is, I mean, there's obviously huge challenges to get to that place, but actually we're not talking about a home of the future with some of this stuff. You mentioned yourself, you've got solar panels, you've got heat pump, you've electrified. A guest we had on this show gave me an update the other day. Mick Wall, he's just taken he's just had his induction hob installed for viewers who followed the Mick Wall episode. That was his last remaining step in the journey. So yeah, update for everybody. Mick Wall is now, his gas meter has gone. So
just need to get him on good energy now. That's
it. We'll make the switch. I think Octopus have him tied up. I think he's like a poster child for them. But he's made that transition and is now working with us in the home energy optimization, because that is the final step. His evenings are spent, scheduling and programming his devices and technologies as to when to charge for the next day. So it's a huge leap for most people from where they are right now. But actually, we're not talking about technology that hasn't been invented here. We're talking about stuff that's available, albeit very, very expensive in a lot of cases at the moment. But we are seeing those homes that have made that transition and have that technology installed, when supported by innovative tariffs and energy trading strategies, the blended cost making it a worthwhile investment if you have the money to put it in the first place. And I think what Good Energy are demonstrating in the market is not only that solution side of the business with the ability to install technologies, but that trading strategy, that true renewable trading strategy. Not the greenwashing part of it, not necessarily. Even with these smart energy tariffs that we're seeing on the market now, the true ability to consume renewables, because for the best will in the world, take Mick as an example, a huge advocate for this industry and done some incredible things in terms of proving people wrong about how heat pumps are performing and being able to demonstrate that through data. But fundamentally, if he consumes energy between those hours of, say, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., it's going to be coming from fossil fuels. He will do everything in his power to avoid that period in the day and try and charge his batteries and use his appliances in a certain way to make sure he kind of coasts through that period. But any electricity consumed during that time, and I'm sure other periods in the day, will come from fossil fuels. Whereas I think that ability to get to that kind of half-hourly or hourly trading of renewable energy and truly doing that, and maybe with abundances of renewable energy hitting the grid, bringing those unit prices down. The future doesn't seem that far away. It seems like there's some huge financial barriers that sit in front of it, both in terms of grid infrastructure and the cost of homes going through this transition. But it doesn't feel like we're a million miles away.
No. And I mean, the first step, I think the lion's share of homes will do it. It's the smart meter that's in your home. You can't do half-hourly matching. You can't do kind of smart, innovative tariffs without a smart meter. That part's as good as done. I think the smart meter rollout is kind of winding down to an extent now. So first off, that lets the grid talk to your house, if you like. It lets it kind of make these offers for these agile tariffs, these EV tariffs, these kind of half-hourly matched setups. So I mean, there's always a capital cost for these things, and it is a big barrier. There's a lot of work being done, government eco schemes. I think solar panels, heat pumps are being rolled out certainly to the social sector, those that, probably would be on the less affluent side, but arguably need the help more with their energy prices. So they are being rolled out. There are plenty of people out there with these green homes, if you like. I mean, I got quite fortunate with my heat pump that, being a Good Energy kind of staff member, we had a very nice staff discount scheme going on, but as a consumer, we still paid for the heat pump. Our solar panels were put in, before we as Good Energy could do solar panels, so I paid for those out of pocket. But again, it's not always feasible for people, and so anything that kind of policy is doing to help, anything that industry is doing to help, it's not unnoticed, and it's not kind of lost upon people that do need the support. The green mortgages kind of episode you had the other day, I mean, rewarding people for having green homes for their mortgages. You could save on your interest rates for having green technology. I mean, things like that. That's great, and that's coming from private industry. That's not coming from
it's what it needs
policy
now.
At the moment.
The more we've been in and around the kind of green finance space way before Heatio was formed, and actually that the ability to get the financiers and the lenders into this space. The key challenge has always been around that kind of data. When we went right back to the start of the journey, when we started speaking with the lenders, the ability to predict the savings for a customer fundamentally, because it's like, if we finance these technologies into these people's homes, we need to be able to underwrite that and stand by that. And then secondly, the longevity of it. And we quickly found that there was such a lack of data available on how homes perform.
Yeah,
it's nearly impossible to simulate with any kind of accuracy how a home may perform in various different circumstances or with various different technologies applied. And that's been such a big focus for us over the last year under the Green Homes Finance Accelerator program with Perenna, and Mike, as you mentioned, was on the show. This ability to create a digital twin of the home, and that links right back to the smart meters. We're in a position now with the ability to monitor a home, be able to monitor the smart meter data, monitor their gas, electricity consumption over those half-hourly periods, but also look at internal temperatures in the home, external air temperatures, any kind of climate factors that might be impacting it. And then we do a kind of LiDAR survey of the home. So we create a 3D model of the property. And then we start to segment that against the occupancy. So we might say, right, okay, we know this home has, 2 parents and 2 children, and this is their usage profile. But then we simulate that against actual heat pump performance in similar homes to be able to say, this is what we think your energy profile might look like post-installation. Then we apply solar over the top of it and battery storage over the top of it. So people start to give a bit of confidence based on their own data, how that home looks post-installation.
And this is happening now today. It's like, it sounds 10, 20 years away, doesn't it? But I mean, there's a lot of more intelligent people than I looking at things like that.
Same here, to be honest. That was the algorithm guy who spoke about before.
And you see the data on these, and you see, like I mentioned there, the latent project we were working on with the University of Southampton over the past kind of 12 months or so. And it was doing some kind of balancing, in the middle of winter, can we turn somebody's heat pump, not off, but we can limit it remotely, maybe ramp it down 50%. So, you might have something that's pushing out 8 kilowatts at capacity, you're ramping that down to 4 kilowatts over periods of 2 hours. Customers have like a QR code, or they can press a boost button on their app or whatever. And like, if they feel like, oh, it's too cold, I want to stop this. Nobody ever kind of, it was just like, the guys were like, oh, we'll push it a bit further. Let's do half an hour. Let's do an hour. It's -2 today. Let's do 2 hours. And people were fine with it.
You don't see it. I think that's the most exciting part, when we actually start getting into some of this data and the modeling and the machine learning aspects of all this stuff, which all can sound quite futuristic and scary. But actually, when you see that impact and you understand how the home performs, it doesn't take long for the model to realize that actually, I can turn it off for a little bit here.
Yeah.
And that's really where, you start to see that kind of half-hourly trading start to come into play.
Yeah.
If there isn't the renewable energy on the grid, and take it to maybe my dream tariff, the renewable energy isn't there available on the grid to trade, and you as Good Energy have predicted that it's not going to be there during that 2-hour window, being able to kind of convey that to the customer base and say, for the next 2 hours, we don't think there's going to be enough, if any, renewable energy on the grid. How do we skip through that period
Yeah.
whilst minimizing the impact and maximizing the comfort for the homeowner. And that's probably a combination of, battery storage, thermal storage, and intelligence around how the heating system is performing.
Yeah, I mean that's that whole kind of future smart grid thing coming in, isn't it? I mean, there's I think certainly in the States, using the EV parked outside as a battery store, so you can draw energy from your EV and put it back into the EV. And again, you mentioned the Octopus Agile tariff there. The reason for those fluctuations is because there's either an abundance or a lack of energy at particular times. So you're trying to incentivize the periods where there's an abundance of energy and kind of step away from the periods where there's not as much to go around. That's the idea there. But again, it's not, a homeowner's not going to be there making those choices themselves. Like, right, half an hour, lights off. People did that when they did the kind of power pause events that we have, the grid flexibility. But you see, I think there's Equinox project that National Grid are doing, which is investigating whether we can kind of ramp down people's demand. There's government studies on it. We've kind of independently done our own one with University of Southampton. Everybody is looking at this, and it is coming down the road. It's just finding, I think, the sweet spot where consumers are comfortable with it, but there is enough flexibility in the grid that, we have loads of wind today. Let's preheat your homes. Let's put heat into your hot water. Let's charge a vehicle. Tomorrow it's going to be cloudy. There's less solar during the day, but it's a cold day. So how can we tap into those kind of pre-charging elements that we've done? How can we start to engage the customers in a way that they wouldn't kind of... Home comfort is something that people know. If they are cold in their home, they will notice, they will tell you they do not like it. So it's how you can reduce that impact and bring that flexibility to the grid.
And normalize this thing for people. I think that's the ambition part and us who are living in this thing every day. We kind of see these technologies. It is the future, and this is where it's going to go. And it's hugely exciting. And then we take it to the reality of the situation with 3.5 million people in fuel poverty, and those numbers only set to increase as energy prices continue to fluctuate, cost of living crisis. It's how do we bring them on this journey, and we'll talk about this a little bit in the next part of the show. But a part of the project that we're working on, delivering energy as a service, is all around how do we get the lenders into this market, and how do we essentially turn pro-consumers who are currently buying energy at various rates into prosumers, and they're able to sell that energy back to the grid. And it's probably a concept that's completely alien to the majority of the UK population. But if we bring financiers to the table, we put the technology in the home, we monetize that technology through enabling the grid to balance, which currently goes on at the moment, predominantly done through burning fossil fuels. Mm-hmm. We create that balancing capabilities, and for the homeowner, it's just, you're going to put this technology in your home, you're going to be warm, you're going to have the power when you need it, and the technology has to kind of flatline this, and you're also going to get incentivized to do so. It makes logical sense. It's just a really big challenge to get the lenders to the table to say, yeah, we're going to back this, because it's a 20-25 year investment into domestic scale infrastructure, which is a challenge. Yeah,
exactly that. And the finance element is key. You mentioned there about the numbers of people in fuel poverty, which is it's going to sadly grow. How do those guys see the benefit of this smart grid infrastructure? And there's an incentive there to reach net zero, of course, to bring renewables to the grid, but also, like you say, everyone's got to come on that journey. You can't say, well, this demographic's going to be on fossil fuels and cheap energy, and these guys are going to be on more expensive renewable energy. So how can you make it work for everybody? And that's not something we, as a relatively small in this country, still renewables sector, can do ourselves. We need to bring finance on board. It needs kind of mass adoption, and mass adoption means normalizing it, and normalizing it needs kind of funding. Yeah. EVs 10 years ago, EVs were the little technology we don't really want to know about, people not really wanting to replace their internal combustion with electric vehicles. All of a sudden it became mainstream, finance was involved, and then, normalized. I don't think you can walk down a street without seeing a Tesla now. So it is normalized, and nobody would fret about being given a free electric car anymore. But 10 years ago,
I think that to me would be the exciting part when we see, certainly in that, what we're trialing under energy as a service. Actually, can you put this thing in somebody's home? And okay, there's a monthly fee to having it, But the long-term view, if you can really make this work and demonstrate what we're referring to as these ancillary revenue streams through balancing, could you actually go to a family in fuel poverty and put solar panels on the roof, put a battery storage system in the home, put a heat pump in, take all the gas appliances away, electrify that home? Can you do that, ensure that they have improved comfort, and be in a position where the repayments of that capital cost of those equipment, rather than being paid by the homeowner, is actually being paid through balancing services delivered to the grid? That is probably quite a bit down the line.
Yeah.
But when we see some of the programs we're involved in at the moment, where we're going through with the energy systems operator in their balancing mechanism, we're doing trading where we're selling energy back to the grid through smart export guarantee. It doesn't feel like it's completely off the chart crazy ambitions. It just feels like we've got to bring the capital cost down of the installations. We've got to bring lenders to the table and give them confidence, and data will do that. And then we've got to really get under the skin of the energy infrastructure, the network operators, and how we ensure that the grid can cope with all this electrification, and then finally take this to consumers and say that is this a proposition that actually sits with you? Or but I feel like
not much to do then.
Just a couple of challenges on the way. But we are going to focus in our next episode on one of those key challenges in our chosen subject of heat pumps, and how do we get them into more homes. I think we've talked about energy supplies enough. I think we've ticked that box. I think we can move on to our favourite subject now.
Good.
Thank you very much for coming on the show, Max, and we'll catch up in the next episode.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks so much for watching, everybody, and speak to you again soon.